China has been saying the epidemic is under control in the country. This comes as Chinese leader Xi Jinping is seen wearing a mask, leading many to question the true situation. Frontline medical staff have been fighting the outbreak since the very beginning in China. Months later, many complaining the money the regime promised never came. The Chinese regime labeling whistleblower Dr. Li Wenliang a martyr. Chinese netizens are not convinced, saying they would rather Li still be alive. A Swedish politician calling for an investigation into the Chinese regime's cover-up of the virus pandemic, and a European diplomat warns of a politics of generosity. And in the U.S., New York sees its highest toll yet. 630 die from the virus in one day. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Xi Jinping, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, is wearing a mask again. The Chinese regime claims the virus is under control in China, but on April 3rd, Xi Jinping was seen wearing a mask again in Beijing. He was spotted with no mask at the end of March during a visit to Zhejiang province. Some are now speculating the epidemic in Beijing may have worsened. Long lines of people buying food are seen in China. This is Fenghua, a city in eastern China. A sign on the side of the building reads Fenghua Emergency Food Supply Station. This station is only opened in times of emergency. In the last few days, people in some provinces have been panic buying food and other supplies, even though authorities say everything is under control. A Chinese lawyer was reprimanded after posting an article about funeral urns in Wuhan. The article was then deleted and her social media account suspended. The article had photos of long lines outside of local funeral home in Wuhan. They showed family members of patients who died from the virus, waiting to pick up the cremated remains. A letter from the Zhengzhou Lawyers Association criticized the lawyer for spreading comments that stirred discontent with the government. The article was read over 500,000 times, shared over 10,000 times, and has over 4,000 comments. It has had a certain negative impact on society. China suspended all entertainment activities on April 4th to mourn those who died from the CCP virus. State media even changed their colors to black and white, but some were quick to notice that photos of party leaders stayed in color. On China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs website, everything is black and white except for photos of party leader Xi Jinping and Vice Premier Li Keqiang. On the State Council's website, a photo of Xi Jinping planting trees is still in color, while everything else is in black and white. Other state-run media like People's Daily, Guangming Daily, Beijing Daily, Economic Daily all feature the photo of Xi planting trees in color. The CCP is now labeling whistleblower Dr. Li Wenliang a martyr and is asking the country to honor him with 3 minutes of silence. But netizens say it's too little, too late.
It's been almost 2 months since Dr. Li Wenliang passed away. The whistleblower sounded the alarm on the CCP virus in December, only to be punished by Chinese police and eventually killed by the virus. This week, the Chinese regime designated him a martyr. The term is often used by the Communist Party to label those who died serving the regime. But Chinese netizens aren't convinced by the official gesture. Some leaving comments on Li's social media Weibo, writing, "You are a martyr now, but I do not want you to be a martyr. I want you to be healthily alive." Another says, "We are always mourning, but what use is it? If we don't hold those people accountable, if we don't reflect and learn from the lessons, history will keep repeating itself." Li's Weibo has become a virtual wailing wall for the Chinese. Every minute, 3 or 4 new comments pops up, subtly expressing their grief, anxiety, and frustration. One Wuhan resident says those who are truly responsible for Li's death are not held accountable.
They were just trying to find scapegoats for the totalitarian regime, like the police who summoned Li Wenliang, but they are not at all changing the totalitarian nature of the system. The authorities are trying to say, oh, there are some bad apples in our system. But our system is not bad. It's trying to deceive people.
Human rights advocate Yang Zhanqing says the gesture does not mean authorities are accepting blame in the case. They did not void the letter they made Li sign admitting wrongdoing.
The authorities didn't withdraw the letter of admonition to Li Wenliang. State media, including CCTV, never apologized for their false coverage. I don't think this is truly restoring Li Wenliang's name. These measures are superficial. The authorities won't learn any lesson or change their ways because of this incident. They label Dr. Li Wenliang a martyr only to cover their own wrongdoings. In the future, if something like SARS, swine flu, or CCP virus happens again, the authorities will still follow their playbook of cover-up, information control, and crackdown.
Li's death triggered angry response from many Chinese people. They flooded social media with hashtags and selfies calling for freedom of speech. A group of Republican lawmakers are now introducing a bill that named after Li Wenliang. The bill will allow sanctions against foreign officials who suppress or distort information during public health crisis. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
In China, the CCP promised to give frontline medical workers subsidies for fighting the outbreak, but months on, many are complaining that they still haven't received it.
The CCP has promised financial subsidies to frontline medical staff since the beginning of the outbreak. But on March 11th, the regime suddenly narrowed the definition of frontline medical workers. This meant many medical staff lost their subsidies or were even asked to return subsidies they had already received. One netizen complained, "I worked 16 hours a day for 2 months. I don't get overtime, that's fine, but now you ask me to return the subsidy I received?" Another medical worker said the quarantine fee was taken out of her own pocket, even though the only reason she was quarantined was because she had contact with infected patients while working. An assistant nurse complained that the local health committee excluded assistant nurses from the subsidy grant. She wrote, "Is an assistant nurse not a human being? I cared for many critical patients." A doctor in Anhui says some doctors worked for 50 days, but because they only saw one virus case during that time, they only got subsidized for 1 day. He sarcastically says going to work is like buying a lottery ticket. An online survey of 1,900 medical staff showed that 80% of respondents had not received subsidies for fighting the epidemic.
A Swedish politician is also calling for an investigation into the regime's cover-up. Charlie Weimers is a member of the European Parliament. He says the international investigation needed to assess the scope of China's corona reparations. He says the WHO should be investigated for promoting misinformation and helping Communist China cover up the pandemic. In the U.S., Senator Martha McSally is calling on the director of the WHO to step down. Senator Ben Sasse says the Chinese Communist Party has lied, is lying, and will continue to lie about the coronavirus to protect the regime. Another European diplomat has warned of the use of a politics of generosity in the virus crisis. As China appears to be stepping up in its leadership role in the fight against the pandemic, some are questioning the Chinese regime's motives.
China says it is delivering supplies to over 100 countries to fight the pandemic. The EU top diplomat Joseph Borrell warned of a battle of narratives.
And when you see how it is being reflected in the news, it's a kind of battle of narrative about which system is more performant in order to face the pandemic.
In a blog post last week, Borrell said there is a geopolitical component in the virus crisis, which includes a struggle for influence through spinning and the politics of generosity. He also wrote, China is aggressively pushing the message that unlike the US, it is a responsible and reliable partner. The UK cabinet minister announced on Saturday it has received 300 ventilators from China to treat virus patients. Several European countries have rejected Chinese-made equipment after finding they were faulty.
An online petition is asking President Trump to hold the Chinese regime accountable for the pandemic. The petition says the CCP has lied about the outbreak from the start, rejected the CDC's offer of help, and then blamed the U.S. for the virus. It's already collected over 80,000 signatures and needs 16,000 more by April 15th to get a response from the White House. And in New York, over 600 people died from the virus in one day. That's the highest number of deaths the state has had yet. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on the governor's announcement.
On Saturday, the governor said the state saw its highest number of deaths from the disease in one day. But some relief, he said 2/3 of those who've been hospitalized have been discharged.
That's what we've been saying all along. Most people won't be hospitalized. People who are hospitalized will come in, be treated, and leave. That's 2/3.
The total number of patients hospitalized did drop by over 300 on Friday, but the number of ICU patients and intubation increased. The governor said they're not at the apex yet, and to stock up on ventilators, turned to China for help.
The Chinese government is going to facilitate a donation of 1,000 ventilators that will come into JFK today.
He has said that each ventilator can cost at least $25,000, so in all, those 1,000 ventilators may be valued at $25 million. GM, Ford, and other American companies have already started to ramp up production of ventilators, and Oregon's governor is also sending New York 140 of theirs. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
American mask manufacturer 3M is facing criticism for not putting U.S. customers first. The company denies it prioritizes foreign buyers, but the White House isn't happy.
3M is at the center of a controversy over the Defense Production Act. The White House is not happy that the company was getting its N95 respirator masks out to foreign countries, while the U.S. struggles to find personal protective equipment. Under the Defense Production Act, 3M will have to offer its products to the U.S. as first priority. 3M says they will comply, but says there will be consequences. 3M claims its partners in Canada and Latin America will retaliate against the U.S. and make it harder to get respirators here. President Trump said he and the people dealing with 3M were not happy. An official from the Florida Division of Emergency Management told Fox News 3M is not responding to orders from U.S. agencies because foreign buyers are showing up with large amounts of cash. 3M denies that it is not cooperating. It says it ramped up mask production for the U.S. market before the Defense Production Act. The company using as an example that it got permission from the Chinese regime to export 10 million masks to the U.S. from its China factory.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is still self-quarantining. His pregnant fiancée has symptoms of the virus as well. And in Germany, the Air Force is helping treat infected people.
In some countries, the rate of infections is slowing, while in others, it's ramping up. Britain's death toll from the virus rose by 20% to over 4,000 from Thursday to Friday, with more than 700 new fatalities. In Italy, the number of patients in intensive care fell for the first time. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tested positive with the virus last week. Now his pregnant fiancée said she had spent the past week in bed with symptoms of coronavirus, but now felt stronger and was on the mend. Singapore reported 75 new virus cases on Saturday, the country's biggest daily increase so far as local infections spiked. Singapore has reported a total of over 1,000 infections and suffered 6 deaths from the global pandemic. The German Air Force transported more critically ill patients from other parts of Europe, where they will get further treatment. 2 advanced medical aircrafts transported 12 patients from Italy and 2 from France to Germany this week.
As Ecuador's government struggles with the outbreak, its citizens are taking matters into their own hands.
A video filmed by the daughter of a man who allegedly died of the virus appears to show his family digging a grave in a field after local authorities failed to remove the body. Cars also lined up outside a cemetery in Ecuador's largest city, Guayaquil, waiting to carry coffins. Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno said the government was building a special camp for victims of the virus in Guayaquil, where an outbreak has killed over 80 people. Many of the bodies left at home for days, but some are questioning the real death toll. One Twitter video from an Ecuadorian journalist seeming to show bodies outside a hospital. The tweet says they were without refrigeration or other preservation. It says hundreds have died from the coronavirus in the province of Guayas, but authorities only report 145. Residents have complained they have no way to dispose of relatives' remains due to strict quarantine and curfew measures to prevent the spread of the virus.
Stay-at-home orders across the globe are putting pressure on the food supply chain. As suppliers try to adjust to the new circumstances, some U.S. farmers are having to dump thousands of gallons of milk. And in India, farmers feeding crops to their cattle.
Lately, bare grocery store shelves seems like the new norm. But oddly enough, as the demand for milk and other dairy products is growing, American farmers are still having to dump milk before it spoils. Dairy Farmers of America told farmer Jason Liedl Tuesday he had to start dumping his milk. The problem is partly because there aren't enough truck drivers. Another challenge is shifting production from packaging for wholesale to packaging for grocery stores. Dairy analysts say it would take millions of dollars to install new equipment, like packaging robots and labeling machinery. And in India, farmers are even resorting to dumping truckloads of lettuce for their cattle to eat.
Due to lower prices and the market closure, I am offering iceberg lettuce for free to people so that they can feed their cattle. We will incur losses, but at least it would overcome the hunger of cattle.
Some farmers feeding them strawberries since people aren't selling them anymore. Potato farmers in the Netherlands are left with millions of season-old potatoes, since usually they sell them to restaurants for fries.
It's a very big bummer for me and a lot of colleagues in Holland.
The country's agricultural organization estimates the outbreak so far has caused 6 billion euros in damages.
Reusable face masks, the next solution to the world shortage, is on the way, and it's coming from a company in Chile.
Face masks are becoming a precious resource. To this company from Chile, face masks should be made to last.
Can be recyclable or reusable, washable, and can be printed anywhere in the world.
Typical face masks worn by medical workers are meant to be used once, but these ones are reusable. They will be 3D printed from copper, a metal known for eliminating bacteria. And now, the company is facing a new problem.
The demand for the material is so high that we had a break in the world stock a little while ago. Now we are working very hard to have more access to material, both in Chile and the rest of the world.
The company says that the masks have been approved by the National Institute of Health. Their design, freely available online, has already been downloaded 5 million times.
The coronavirus task force gave their daily briefing this afternoon, and President Trump said that 4,000 Americans stuck abroad have been safely returned to the U.S.
President Trump said he expects the worst of the CCP virus to hit between this week and next week, but over fears of shortages, he said states are making inflated requests for medical supplies that other areas may need more of.
We have some states and areas where they're just asking for far more. I mean, look, we had one state asking for 40,000 ventilators. 40,000. Think of it, 40,000. It's not possible. They won't need that many, and now they're admitting they don't need that many, but we're getting as many as we can to them. Again, nobody's ever seen anything like this in terms of ventilators, in terms of protective equipment and uniforms.
He also said the federal government is just a backup for states, but it's been playing a very big role in the pandemic so far. Like in New York, the federal government has given its several hospitals a military ship, ventilators, and other supplies. But Trump said its governor, who spoke about getting more ventilators today, hasn't been as gracious as other officials who've gotten his help.
We have given the governor of New York more than anybody has ever been given in a long time. I'll just say, I was going to say in history, but in a long time. And I think he's happy. But I think that, because I watched what he said today, and it was fine. I wouldn't say gracious. It wasn't gracious. It was.
He said New York will also be getting about another 1,000 medical military staff. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
New UV light technology is being used to disinfect surfaces in open areas to slow the spread of the virus. Studies have shown UV light of a certain wavelength can kill viruses without harming humans. This is different from germicidal lamps that can cause cancer. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
Breakthroughs in lower wavelength UV light technology may prove useful in killing the virus on surfaces and in open areas. A Columbia University study saying it is safe on humans, unlike higher wavelength germicidal lamps that can cause cancer. A physician explains how it works.
It does not kill or penetrate our skin, but it does kill and penetrate the virus.
In Russia, certain types of UV lights used to disinfect the metro. The physician saying these new lights could disinfect the subways while people ride in them if they're approved by the FDA.
This can be implemented in hospitals all across the country. It can be implemented in our public transit system. And, the FDA should at least take a look at it.
Robots are used to disinfect hospitals with UV light, but he says they're slow and expensive as opposed to the lower wavelength light.
Here, you just take the wand and go down the hall and just kind of disinfect everything. And you could do liquid surfaces. You could do N95. The robot cannot disinfect N95.
Older germicidal lamps can ruin N95 masks if used to disinfect them, but the physician says the lower wavelength light can disinfect personal protective equipment without damaging it. Kevin Hogan, NTD News, New York.
And even top sports stars need to find ways to keep fit during the epidemic. Germany's top soccer team, Bayern Munich, have come up with a way. Bayern Munich soccer players in Germany are now doing their workout from home via a video group chat. Following a coach through an online app, players are challenged to try different exercises from home with a ball.
This time with our heads, and you try to keep your balance. You can also try a couple of other things.
They mostly do fun challenges which are not used during professional matchups.
Now try to keep juggling the ball while you take your shirt off. Let's see who can do it.
A number of clubs have drawn up off-site training programs for their players. Programs vary according to what equipment each player has access to at home. Bayern Munich has planned sessions that can last between 75 and 90 minutes. They not only do these fun and challenging exercises, but also cardio and endurance workouts. And if you would like to find out more about the Chinese regime's power struggle, we will be premiering Claws of the Red Dragon this Sunday, 9 p.m. here on this channel. The 54-minute dramatization by former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon delves into Chinese telecom giant Huawei's close ties to the Chinese regime and its goal of controlling 5G.
It's a lie. We are in an uncomfortable position because we have an extradition treaty with the Americans.
我这里有几个可以诬告他们在中国实施间谍活动的加拿大人的名单。
I think the entire U.S. government is fed up with China going afoul of international laws.
They just arbitrarily sentenced a Canadian to death. There's no telling where this retaliation will end.
You need to be straight with me, because if I'm going to survive in here, I need the truth.
It's a mess, Michael. I'm not sure.
This is a crazy accusation by countries who are jealous of our success.
Your Honor, Ms. Feng is an extremely wealthy woman. The Crown is asking that her bail be denied.
The legal system operates without interference. Full stop.
Jane, these are serious people, and they know everything about you.
为什么?
Here at China in Focus, we bring you first-hand information from inside China. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates.